have you ever just stopped and wondered, why do I do that? What's really driving my thoughts, my habits, my feelings? Well, that's the giant, fascinating question at the heart of psychology. So today, we're going to cut through all the myths and get right to the core of what this science is really about, the science of us. Okay, let's just tackle the biggest myth right out of the gate. You meet a psychologist, maybe at a party or something, and you get that little thought in the back of your head, are they analyzing me right now? Can they just look at me and read my mind? The short answer, no. Absolutely not. But the fact that we even ask that question really shows you how much confusion is out there.
You know, it's kind of easy to see why people get confused. We lump psychology in with things like astrology or palm reading. I mean, they all seem to be about understanding people, right? But one is about making predictions with, let's be honest, zero evidence. The other is a science dedicated to understanding why we behave the way we do based on facts. And this right here is the fundamental difference. On one side, you have pseudo-psychology, things like fortune-telling. They run on belief in stories. But on the other side, you've got actual psychology, which is built on a solid foundation of empirical observation, scientific study, and critical thinking. It's about things we can actually see, measure, and test. One asks you to believe, the other invites you to question.
So what's the fatal flaw of all this pseudo-psychology? Well, it's basically designed to never be wrong. If evidence pops up that contradicts a belief, followers just ignore it or explain it away. Real science, and that absolutely includes psychology, does the exact opposite. It actually hunts for its own mistakes, because that's the only way we get closer to the truth. So how did psychology make that leap from philosophical idea to a full-blown science? To get that, we need to take a quick look back at its journey. I'm talking from ancient questions about the soul all the way to its modern scientific focus on behavior. You know, the word itself tells a pretty cool story. Psychology comes from two Greek words, psyche, which means soul or breath, and logos, which means knowledge or study. So for thousands of years, it was literally the study of the soul, a quest to figure out the very essence of what makes us tick. But what they were studying has changed a lot. It started with the soul, which is, a pretty philosophical idea. Then it shifted to the mind, then to consciousness. But here's the thing. To become a real science, psychology needed something it could actually observe and measure. It needed to study behavior. There's this famous quote from a psychologist named Robert Woodworth that just captures this whole transition perfectly. He said, "First, psychology lost its soul, then its mind, then it lost its consciousness. It still has behavior of a sort." Now that sounds like a huge loss, right? But it was actually a massive victory. By shedding the things it couldn't see or measure, psychology wasn't losing its way, it was finally finding its scientific footing. And that brings us right here to the modern definition. Psychology is the scientific study of behavior, what we do, and our mental processes, our thoughts and feelings. And notice that it says humans and animals. That's because by studying simpler systems, we can sometimes uncover these really fundamental principles of behavior that apply to all of us. But here's where it gets really interesting. Even with a clear definition, there isn't just one single way to explain why we do what we do. The field actually uses a bunch of different perspectives. Think of them like different camera lenses to understand our super complex actions. Let's use a super simple example that I'm sure we've all seen. A little kid suddenly snatches a toy away from their brother or sister. Why'd they do it? Well, the answer totally depends on which psychological lens you're looking through. Okay, first up, the behavioral perspective. From this point of view, it's really simple. The kid isn't bad. They've just learned that snatching the toy works. In the past, that action got them what they wanted, so the behavior was reinforced. It's just a learned habit. That's it. Now let's switch lenses. A psychologist with a biological view would look for physical causes. Is there a genetic component to aggression? Is it maybe related to hormones or brain chemistry? They're looking for the roots of that behavior inside the body itself. Then you've got the cognitive view, which basically treats the mind like a computer. The child isn't just reacting, they are actively processing information. They see the toy, they remember wanting it before, they calculate the odds of getting away with it, and then they act. For a cognitive psychologist, that thought process is the key. And finally, the psychoanalytic lens. This one looks way beneath the surface. From this viewpoint, the real reason might be hidden in the unconscious. Maybe the child is actually mad at a parent, but it's not safe to show it. So that anger gets displaced onto an easier, weaker target, their sibling. See, 4 different lenses, 4 totally different explanations for the exact same action. Okay, so with all these different perspectives, what do psychologists actually do all day? I mean, the stereotype is a therapist with a notepad and a couch, right? But that is just a tiny, tiny piece of the puzzle. Let's take a look at where psychology is really at work. So that classic image of a therapist's office, yeah, it's definitely a thing. About a third of psychologists are in private practice. But look at where everyone else is. Almost 30% are in colleges and universities doing research and teaching. You'll find them in hospitals, in big corporations, in government. The field is way more diverse than people think. And no matter where they work, pretty much all psychologists are united by 4 main goals. First, to simply describe behavior, what's happening. Then, to explain it, why is it happening. From there, the goal is to predict what might happen in the future. And finally, in a lot of fields, the goal is to control or change behavior, hopefully for the better. And trust me, those goals have effects you probably don't even realize. Psychology is quietly shaping the world around you every single day. It's in the design of your phone's apps, it's in how supermarkets are laid out, it's used to design safer cockpits for pilots, and to help train police officers. It is, quite literally, everywhere. So in the end, psychology is so much more than an academic subject. It's this incredible tool for understanding the most complicated and fascinating thing we know of, the human mind. It really is the science of why we do what we do. And that brings us right back to where we started, but this time, the question's for you. What will you discover about yourself?